friends. Well, welcome back for another story. This one's called The Adventures of Everyday Geniuses series, Last to Finish, a story about the smartest boy in math class. Written by Barbara Esham and illustrated by Mike and Carl Gordon. We start out, he says, I always thought that math was going to be my thing. My dad is an engineer and he always says that math is the key to success. It is just my luck that the door to success is locked with the math keys. I'm Max Leonard and I'm a third grader at Perryville Elementary School. This year has been a bit tough for me because it's the first time that I ever felt I was terrible at something. And that doesn't feel so good. The problem started when Mrs. Tappel, our teacher, started using the timer to test us on our multiplication facts. If I take my time, I can get every one of my math facts without any problem at all. The problem comes when I have to finish them in record time, like a sprinter running toward the finish line, hoping to break the world record. The timer works just fine for some kids like David Peterson. He likes to be the first to finish everything. It doesn't work for me. As soon as Mrs. Tappel starts the timer, my heart begins to pound and my hands begin to sweat, and then the worst thing happens. My mind freezes. It happened again today. One by one, my classmates finished their math facts. I knew the answers last night when I did my practice test, but they disappeared today. All I could think about was that terrible timer ticking that terrible tick, tick, tick. What happened? Are math facts erased from my mind while I sleep? Why does 2 times 3 suddenly look like an alien message that can only be deciphered by scientists? Time is up, Mrs. Tappel announced. I was the last one to hand in my paper and I still had 20 problems to go. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, David Peterson whispered, Max, Max, last in math. In the lunchroom after math, David continued to tease me. Why does David Peterson have to be so cruel? Does embarrassing me make David Peterson feel important? The chanting started up again during recess, like I knew it would. The chanting was so loud, even the preschool class heard it. They thought it was okay to chant along. Max, Max, last in math. After school, I went straight home to do my homework. And the day got even worse because I couldn't find my math folder. I emptied my backpack to search for it, which wasn't such a bad idea. I needed to get rid of a few things. Mom, I can't find my math folder, I admitted. It was really embarrassing. Max, you're going to have to be more responsible with your schoolwork, especially your math materials, she replied. Sometimes I get the feeling that my mom and dad are disappointed in me. I know they love me, but I want them to be proud of me too. Or maybe I'm just disappointed in myself. Timed math facts have ruined everything. Max, Mrs. Tappel and Mr. Singleton have asked us to attend a meeting. They want to discuss your math performance. I'm sure that everything will be just fine. Remember, Max, your dad and I are proud of your hard work. You may just need to work a little harder, my mom said with a smile. My parents had been encouraging about the conference, but I was nervous when it was time to meet a few days later. I expected Mrs. Tappel and Mr. Singleton to tell Mom and Dad that I was the worst math student they'd ever taught at Perryville Elementary. The fateful day arrived. Mr. and Mrs. Leonard, thank you for taking the time to meet with us today, Mr. Singleton said with a serious voice. About 2 weeks ago, I found Max's math folder in the hallway. I didn't return it because I was very surprised by the math exercises Max has been working on, he added. We thought it was important that we discuss Max's math ability with you, Mrs. Tappel said. Math ability, I thought. What math ability? I'm always the last to finish my math facts. I guess it's the lack of ability we'll be talking about. I knew this conference wouldn't be good. How long has Max been practicing Algebra 1? Mrs. Singleton asked. Algebra 1? That must be a mistake, my dad said. Max is only in the 3rd grade. My mom looked confused. Max, what is Mr. Singleton talking about? Well, algebra is something I do for fun. It's like a puzzle. I finished my older brother's pre-algebra book last year, so sometimes I borrow his algebra book if he isn't using it, of course, I said quietly. All this time we've been concerned about Max's math performance. He has struggled with memorizing multiplication facts all year, my dad said. Max has been asked to memorize math facts. That is different. Max has been asked to memorize math facts. That is difficult for some children and adults, Mr. Singleton explained. Max is a type of math student who understands how numbers work together. He may not be the type of student who learns by memorization. Some people are great at memorizing all sorts of information, while others are great at understanding information. If I could choose between the two, I would rather have students understand mathematics, Mr. Singleton said with a smile. You need your thinking cap for algebra, and Max seems to be wearing his a bit early. Does this mean that Max will move ahead to algebra? My dad asked with pride. We will need to be sure that Max has a complete understanding of the math concepts leading up to algebra. Max will work in a program for accelerated math students so he can build on what he has mastered, said Mr. Singleton. I would also like him to join our math team. He would make a fine addition. Me? On the math team? That is the strangest thing I've ever heard, I said. Not really, Max. You seem to be an algebra whiz. Let's give it a try, my dad added quite proudly. Well, maybe I'll give it a try, but under one condition. No timer. Isn't that a great story? So when I know a lot of kids that when they are being timed to see how much they know about something, their brain does freeze up. And because your brain is frozen in a little part of your brain called the amygdala, it can't use a part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is where all of the stuff happens, where you need to be logical and solve the problem and write things down. So it's a thing. It's a thing that happens. So what happens sometimes too is because when we freeze up like that, we aren't demonstrating what we really are capable of, and that there are different kinds of learning. There's understanding, memorization. Some brains are stronger at one or the other. It doesn't mean one is right or wrong. Everybody has stuff they're strong at, and everybody has stuff that they need to work at a little harder. So if you're one of those kids whose brain gets algebra but not multiplication tables, that's just how your brain works. And if you are a kid that has a brain that freezes up, especially around a time test, you may want to talk to your parents about that timer or the teacher about that timer and see if there is a way that you can show what you know without that pressure of being timed. So I wish you luck with that, and I'll see you for our next story.